السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه واتبع هداه وبعد. Is this a bigger one ولا أنا اللي got shorter? طيب, so tonight inshallah we'll continue our discussion on tadabbur, the meditative reading of the Quran. We had an introduction on our plan, and we talked about the first technique, and that was capturing the awe of Allah. And then we moved to the second one, which was responding to the ayah. And today we'll be talking about another aspect, which is reflecting. How do we reflect on the ayah? Reflecting is something hard to evaluate, but I'll try to give you 3 points that we can practically apply, inshallah. And as we do every class, we have examples of everything we're discussing. So you can use these ayat that we're selecting to meditate on them. By the end of the class, you would have, let's say, 100 ayat that you can meditate on them in the way we did. So you don't have to be even... you don't have to go through the Quran and do it on your own. It would be great if you have a study group doing tadabbur and someone is leading that group to cultivate more, to make sure that the meanings we're reaching are valid. So how do we reflect on the ayat? So we'll do it in 3 ways. We reflect in 3 ways. As I said, we need something that is clear to evaluate, so something we can apply. But before I talk about the 3 ways we can use for reflecting, I'd like to use something to talk about something we say in Arabic about reading the Quran. What is the word for reading Quran in Arabic? Tilawa. Good. So tilawa, people translate tilawa as reading. But the word tilawa literally means something else. The word tilawa comes from tala. So when something tala something, it means it came after, or you follow something. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا. So the moon is coming after. So someone tala someone means they follow that person, or they are coming after. So when we're reading, we're following something. So when you're reading the Quran, what are you following? This is what the word tilawa is. Some people follow the wording, the words, and some people follow the meaning. Tilawat al-ma'na. So we here in Tadabbur, we're concerned more about tilawat al-ma'na, following the meaning, pursuing the meaning, not just the words. So if your job is to read the Quran and just follow the word after another word, what you're doing is tilawatul lafz. This is the reading of the words. But we need tilawatul ma'na, to pursue the meaning. And this is what we mean by reflecting. So which one is nobler? Tilawatul lafz or tilawatul ma'na? So tilawatul ma'na is what matters, is the main goal of your reading. So this is part of the problems we have even with language. We do not know what tilawa is. We limit tilawa to the alfaz, to the wordings, how you articulate the word, the place of articulation, the point of articulation. All of these things, and tajweed is perfect. But you should not forget tilawatul ma'na, following the meaning. And that's what we'll be talking about today. As I said, reflecting could be just when you have a pure heart, it could be a gift from Allah. Allah would give you that gift of understanding. But we will try to put some rules that we can apply so that we'll be seeking Allah's guidance. The first one is repeating the ayah. Repeating the ayah can help you reflect. if we add this to what we mentioned before, we're capturing the awe of Allah, we're responding, so something is touching our hearts. So reflecting would be the next step, and here we can repeat these ayat that touches the heart. You might heard about the importance of praying at night and Qiyamul Layl, and you might keep talking about, can I just read from the Mus'haf in front of me, and I need to memorize a lot of Quran so that I can do Qiyamul Layl with a lot of ayat. Did you know that the Prophet ﷺ one night did Qiyamul Layl with only one ayah, but repeating the ayah? Every rak'ah he would be repeating the same ayah, or maybe repeating the same ayah in the same rak'ah. Why? Because this is what matters. It's you're reading. Ibn Mas'ud said, do not read the Quran in the way you read poetry. He said, اقرأوا القرآن وحركوا به القلوب. Read the Quran in a way that moves your heart. So do not read the Quran to move your tongue. Read the Quran to move the heart. And one way is to repeat the ayat that touches your heart. And you see here some examples. If you can read, please. Oh, you didn't get. If you can just get one and pass. Oh. So we have these examples that we'll be dealing with tonight. Can you read the first ayah, please?
And if you punish them, they are your servants, and if you forgive them, you are the Almighty, the Wise.
So this is what Isa alayhi salam would be saying on the Day of Judgment for people who did not follow him. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used this ayah, and he recited it many times during that night. The whole night is about this ayah. What is significant about this ayah is that it demonstrates our brokenness and surrender before Allah. It didn't even say, you are the all-forgiving, the all-merciful. It ended with, you are the Almighty, the all-wise. يعني خلاص, I cannot ask for anything. It's all about absolute brokenness and surrender to Allah. Usually in the Quran, forgive them, you are the all-forgiving, but here it broke. Why? Because the context is about showing surrender and brokenness and trusting the judgment of Allah. It's final. So this is a moment when khalas, it's either in Jannah or in Nar. And at a moment, this ayah touches the Prophet's heart and he kept repeating it. Can you move on, please?
Be mindful of the day when you will all be returned to Allah. Then every soul will be paid in full for what it has done, and none will be wrong.
So scholars say that this ayah in Musannaf Abi Shayba, this ayah was repeated by Sa'id ibn Jubayr more than 20 times in his qiyam. His whole qiyam is about this ayah, repeating it more than 20 times. So these examples, I didn't mention the whole narration, I just gave the ayah, and I'm telling you now that this ayah is related to whom. And example number 3.
Or do those who commit evil deeds simply think that we will make them equal in their life and after their death? To those who believe and do good, how wrong is their judgment?
So Tamim al-Dari was reported to have repeated this ayah during his night prayer. What would touch, why would this ayah stand up for him? Why would it stand out for him? Because this is an evidence for the Day of Judgment, that there must be a Day of Judgment. Why? Because where does this evidence come from? It comes from within. We're hardwired to believe that the righteous and the wicked are not the same. That's why we have reward and punishment system. We have this deep down in our hearts. Remember last time we talked about the fine-tuning of the world and design, and this necessarily leads to a designer. There is something in me that says someone who killed 1 million people will never be treated like someone who's helping and serving people. That doesn't make any sense. If we trust reason and we have to be consistent with thinking reasonably, then there must be another day when absolute justice will prevail. Because in this life there is no absolute justice. And this dunya is not meant to show the absolute justice. It is a test. It is an area where we're giving a chance to grow, basically. طيب, can you move on to the next one, please?
If you tried to count God's blessings, you could never take them all in. He is truly most forgiving and most merciful.
Good. So this is what Al-Hasan al-Basri used to do. He repeated that ayah many times during his night prayers. And at the end it says, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So again, you could be, even if you're suffering from something, this ayah could be a form of comfort and consolement. You can still, instead of looking at what you missed, you can be more concerned about what you have. And at the end it says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَغَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. طيب, another ayah. This is Surah Al-Zalzalah.
When the earth is shaken in its ultimate quaking, and when the earth throws out all its contents, and humanity cries, "What is wrong with it?" On that day the earth will recount everything, having been inspired by your Lord to do so. On that day people will proceed in separate groups to be shown the consequences of their deeds. So whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it.
Again, what would stand out here is you're putting yourself in the ayah, and you have these two options, and you're worried about belonging to that group, and you're hoping that you're belonging to this good group. So he said, this is reported, it's reported that Muhammad ibn Ka'b al-Qurazi used to say that, and he said, repeating this surah along with Surah Al-Qari'ah is far better to me, and thinking about them is far better to me than reading the whole Quran fast. So this is someone who prioritizes slow, meditative reading over fast reading of the whole Quran without contemplation. By the way, speaking of Surah إِذَا زُلْزِلَتْ, Abu Hanifa used to pray this surah. What do you mean by praying the surah? He would formulate a prayer based on the surah. He said in his dua, يَا مَنْ يَجْزِي مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا خَيْرًا وَيَا مَنْ يَجْزِي مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا شَرًّا أَجِرِ النُّعْمَانِ عَبْدَكَ مِنَ النَّارِ وَمَا يُقَرِّبُ مِنْهَا مِنَ السُّوءِ وَأَدْخِلْهُ فِي سَعَةِ رَحْمَتِكَ. O Allah, who rewards the atom of good, and who punishes the atom of evil, protect your servant An-Nu'man from hell and whatever draws him near to it, and admit him to your vast mercy. So based on the ayah, he's formulating a dua. This is someone responding and reflecting on the ayah. طيب, so this is one way of reflecting. We repeat the ayah. There will be some ayah that you're reading, and you find one word or the content of the ayah resonating with your heart. So this is a chance. Khalas, do not read anymore. This is a great chance for you to repeat the ayah, and you may end up being tearful, because this ayah is speaking to you. This is what you will not find in tafsir. In tafsir, they will tell you this is what it means. They will not tell you how it affects you, because you need to experience that. You have your own version of the Quran when it comes to internalizing it. Now we'll move to the next one, and it's very good way, which is noticing the flow of the ayat. So here we'll read 2 or 3 ayat together, and we'll see how we can reflect on them. Noticing the flow of the ayat. Sometimes you might be reading the Quran and you think the Quran is jumping from one point to another, from one topic to another. What is the relationship between this and this? And what you think is disjointed is actually has great wisdom when you reflect on it. So I have here a few examples of these, and this will be your exercise. So the point here is follow the ayat that you will be hearing, and we'll be looking for the connection between the first and the second ayat. So can you move to example 1 in part 2, noticing the flow of the ayat? And the question that you need to be thinking about is, what is the relationship between the first ayah and the second ayah? Can you read it out loud, please?
Is it not time for believers to humble their hearts to the remembrance of God and the truth that has been revealed, and not to be like those who received the scripture before them, whose time was extended, but whose hearts hardened, and many of whom were lawbreakers? Remember that God revives the earth after it dies. We have made our revelation clear to you so that you may use your reason.
Okay, so what is the relationship between this second ayah and the one before it? The first one is talking about dhikr, and the people who do not do dhikr, and the second one is about reviving the earth after it dies. When you, the idea here is reviving means giving it life. You put the seed in the topsoil, and then it grows. So this is the image we have from. But what is the relationship between this one and the ayah before it? You may think that it is disjointed, but there is great wisdom in that connection, in that flow. Now,
so the hearts are dead. Similarly, they need to be revived with dhikrullah. Just the
very
same way the
good.
earth is
Now,
dead.
so if you, it's like saying the ayah is saying, the first ayah is saying, there are some people who do not respond positively to the remembrance of Allah. And it is high time for them to engage in dhikr. You might say, but I am too bad. I am not that good man who can really engage in dhikr and do dhikr every day and maintain his prayers. So the next ayah says, remember that Allah gives life to the dry earth. And if this is the case, the one who brings life to these dead plants can bring life to your dead heart. So do not give up. So, and cling more to dua and asking Allah for guidance, and do not give up. If He can give life to the earth, He can give life to your heart. So that is the connection that scholars made. طيب, let's move to the next one. And we'll be looking, the next one is about encouraging people to pray, to make dua. And then talking about Allah, the manifestations of Allah's power. And we'll try to see the connection. So the connection here will be trying to think about the connection between the first ayah and the other ayat that followed. Can you read that, please?
Your Lord says, call on me and I will answer you. Those who are too proud to serve me will enter hell humiliated. It is God who has given you the night in which to rest and the day in which to see. God is truly bountiful to people, but most people do not give thanks. Such is God your Lord, the creator of all things. There is no God but Him. How can you be so deluded? This is how deluded those who deny God's messages are. It is God who has given you the earth for a dwelling place and the heavens for a canopy. He shaped you, formed you well, and provided you with good things. Such is God your Lord. So glory be to Him, the Lord of the worlds. He is the living one, and there is no God but Him. So call on Him, and dedicate your religion entirely to Him. Praise be to God, the Lord of the worlds.
Good. So the flow of these ayat can really answer a big question that many people ask. They would say, I keep praying and praying, and my du'as are not answered. This ayah tells them that du'a is more about putting your trust in Allah. Because the beginning of the ayah says, call on me and I will answer you. Sometimes the answer may not be as you expected. The answer could be yes, the answer could be no, the answer could be wait. And how you should react with this, you should trust Allah. How can I develop trust? Remember that He created everything. He deserves to be trusted. So if you're complaining that your dua is not answered, then you have a problem in your trust in Allah. So the reason why we trust Allah is because of His perfect attributes. So when you're making dua because Allah deserves to be called on, because He is the all-knowing, the all-powerful, the all-wise. If you really trust these attributes, you will not doubt the significance of your dua. So when it comes to abandoning dua, it's because of that trust. And we talked about these attributes before. We said these attributes are necessary for creation. If there is God, He must be all-knowing, all-powerful, all-wise. When you're making dua, it's based on that trust of these attributes of Allah. So this is just one insight. This does not answer the whole question, but this is just one insight. Dua is an act of worship. Dua is not about controlling Allah. Dua is like saying, oh Allah, give me this. And then trusting how Allah responds to your dua. Dua is not always about ask and receive. Dua is more about ask and trust. Because you can receive different answers. So do not use dua as if you're controlling Allah. Dua is a form of surrendering to Allah by submitting your request before Allah because you trust Allah. And then you trust the way, and when you demonstrate that surrender before Allah, you need to trust the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with that request. As I said, it could be yes, it could be no, it could be wait. So the flow of the ayat gives you that sense. Remember, you're disappointed at who? The one who created the heavens and the earth. And you're living on this dunya, and you're making a judgment about Allah because of these few years that you're living in this dunya. It's nothing. It's literally nothing. If you read the Quran, many of the prophets would start their dua with Subhanak. Subhanak means holy be you. What is the relation between this and the dua itself? It's like, sorry, I am asking that little thing. Yeah, imagine if you're a great king and someone is saying, can you please give me a pen? What's pen? Yeah, what's $1 compared to your kingdom? You're asking for nothing. So that's why, because of their adab, they are saying Subhanak. This whole request is offered with humility. But it fits, the request fits us. So it's more about trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're praying, you're worshipping Allah, and it is a form of admitting that Allah is in control, and Allah will choose the best for you based on that surrender to Him. But to insist that your dua has to be answered in the way you want and at the time you want, you misunderstand the whole idea of dua. Dua is originally an act of worship. It's about who you are and who He is. And when you acknowledge that, you need to trust the way Allah responds to this request. And this is part of your dua. I'm not saying you will not be answered in the way you want and at the time you want. It could happen, but it's not a condition. I always say this. There was Hajj season, and so I gave a khutbah one day about dua, and someone talked to me about this, and he said, no, sometimes Allah answers in the way we want and at the time we want. And he gave me that incident. He said, we were in Hajj, and we lost one of the kids in our group. You're talking about 2 million people. Where can you find that child? So he said, I made a sincere dua, really from my heart. And he said, oh Allah, we need this kid back, and we're leaving in 20 minutes. So, it's just coming naturally from an old man, mashallah, very, very good, righteous, and humble man. But he said, I said that from my heart, and we found that child before we left. I mean, we have our plane waiting, and we had to leave, but we found the child. But as I said, it's not a condition. It's not a condition. And I did give you also a story about that man who was looking for 9,000 pounds back then, around 10 years ago, and his wife was having surgery in few hours, and he went to the masjid and he prayed very pleadingly. I mean, and a sheikh saw him, and he said, inshallah, don't worry, inshallah, things will be fine. And he said, after salah, someone came to me, the sheikh is saying, after I finished salah, someone came to me and said, yeah, sheikh, I have been waiting to give you the money for zakah so that you can give it to someone who really deserves it. How much do you have? The number he has is exactly the same number that this man needed. It's not just 9,000, it's with fractions. This is exactly the number. The man started crying and the sheikh crying, and when that man giving zakah knew about this incident, he started crying too, because this is أَمَّا يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا. When you demonstrate that surrender and that trust, yes, Allah can answer you in the way you want and at the time you want. But as I said, remember in the back of your mind, this is an act of worship. It's an act of worship. It's not because Allah cannot give it to you. It's because you need to remain a servant and acknowledge Him as the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, can we move to the next example, please?
If it were not that all mankind might have become a single nation of disbelievers, we could have given all those who disbelieved in the Lord of mercy houses with roofs of silver, sweeping staircases to ascend, massive gates, couches to sit on, and golden ornaments. All of these are mere enjoyments of this life. Your Lord reserves the next life for those who take heed of Him.
No.
And whoever is blinded from remembrance of the Most Merciful, we appoint for him a devil, and he is to him a companion.
Now, so what is the connection between talking about remembrance of Allah and the 3 ayat before that? So again, we're noticing the flow of the ayat. And you're learning, there is an insight that you can derive from the flow of the ayat. One of the big problems in early tafsir is that they used to do tafsir of ayat independently. Of course, later in the 5th or 6th century, things changed and they started reading the Quran in a holistic way. But when we notice the flow of the ayat, you get insights. So where is the insight we get here? The insight, I would say, Imam al-Razi said, he's really concerned about the insights we can get from the flow of the ayat. He said, do not be distracted from the worldly positions, because they can distract you from the remembrance of Allah. So this is how he made that connection. 2 worldly positions could delude you from the remembrance of Allah. So that is a red flag. What is the So we said repeating the ayah, noticing the flow of the ayah. The next one is hearing Allah's message to you. Hearing Allah's message to you. So Allah is speaking to you in the Quran, and sometimes with that pure heart, it could get really very personal. You feel that this ayah is like revealed to you, addressing that exact situation that you're dealing with. Did this really happen? There is a great scholar, his name is Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi. He has a book called Al-Mawaqif, and his mawaqif are the situations he went through, and each time he will read the Quran and he find answers to his very situation that he's dealing with. He said, this is Allah's habit with me. When I suffer from a problem, I open the Quran and I read an ayah and I see Allah's message being inspired to me. This is exactly his words. It's kind of inspiration. But of course, this kind of inspiration should not contradict the Quran or the Sunnah. Cannot, otherwise it will be completely big mess. But for him, let me give you an example. Can you read this ayah, please? In example 1.
The Messenger of God ﷺ is an excellent model for those of you who put your hope in God and the last day and remember Him often.
Okay, so we all read this ayah before, and we can understand it in completely different ways. For him, the way he understands this ayah is really very excellent. You can really take it as evidence that hearing Allah's message to you is another blessing from Allah. So he was going through a big problem, and this ayah was a big relief to him. How would this ayah give you comfort when you're facing troubles in life? He said, I read this ayah, and then all of these thoughts came to me. He said, his main focus was this idea of excellent model for you. The Messenger of Allah is an excellent model for you. He said, we can understand it to say the Prophet is an excellent model in the way that you can wear thawb, you can grow your beard, you can do a lot of, you can use the siwak. These are examples that people limit the model for. But for him, he said, no, the Prophet is my model in 4 areas. He mentioned 4 areas. He's my model in the way Allah dealt with him, and in the way he dealt with Allah, and in the way people dealt with him, and in the way he dealt with people. He said, the way Allah dealt with the Prophet, Allah gave him and deprived him. So if you're going through a hardship, remember that the Prophet is your model because he is very close to Allah. And that did not mean that he will be immune from the suffering nature of this life. And this happened with all of the prophets of Allah. They suffer, even though these are the close servants of Allah. If you take them as model, you will not be disappointed at life and what it brings and the challenges it brings. So he's my model, not in the way he dresses. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ read the jubba. Jubba has very wide sleeves. And that was not the Arab way, that was from Sham. And the Sahaba, when they went to Persia, they started wearing like that. So wearing a suit does not mean you're not following Sunnah. But anyway, what I am trying to say here is, he understood. I never read this in tafsir. This is not tafsir. These are gifts from Allah to you. And then he said, also the way the Prophet dealt with Allah is my model. The Prophet ﷺ, as in the hadith, one of Abdullah ibn Shikhir said, I entered the room and I found the Prophet ﷺ praying, and he was crying, and his heart was making sound like boiling kettle because of his because of him being standing in the awe of Allah. That is your model. The Prophet ﷺ, I mean, we're talking about the Prophet lost all of his kids during his lifetime, except for Fatima. All of his kids during his lifetime, except for Fatima. So now, this is my model. If I am being deprived from something, the Prophet is my comfort. His life, and he's a model to me. The way he worshipped Allah, deprivation does not mean he will not worship anymore. It brings more surrender and more devotion to Allah. Because this is someone who understands who he is, who Allah is, what is life, what is the afterlife. This is, as we said before, you will be spiritually intelligent when you consider these four together. You will not be disappointed at Allah. Life is mathematically nothing, but the only thing in life, it shows the real you. That is it. This is what matters for the afterlife. But life itself, compared to the afterlife, is mathematically nothing. So do not be worried too much about that nothing. I'm not saying this to belittle life, but it should be belittled when it tries to contain you and hurt you and makes you depressed. It's not worth it. Move on. We understand it is you're going through pain, but create bigger picture. Do not stay in that limited zone that you're putting yourself in. Broaden your perspectives to get out of that dark room. So the way Allah dealt with the Prophet is my model. The way the Prophet dealt with Allah is my model. And the way people dealt with the Prophet is my model. People do not respect you, do not give you your due respect. The Prophet faced that. People belied him, considered him a liar, called him Majnoon, and he is the close servant of Allah. And he was physically hurt in the Battle of Uhud. And the way he treated people, he was also calm. He was also not quick to anger. And he said, يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِي يَعْلَمُونَ, I wish my people would know. So this ayah that you might think has nothing to do with the trouble you're facing, to him he said, this is what any seeker of Allah needs in life, because all of what you need in life is your relationship with Allah, and Allah's relationship with you, and your relationship with people, and people's relationship with you. This is something that you don't find in commentaries in the Quran, but this is when you read seeking guidance. We learned this from him. I mean, I would not reach that high level of understanding. It's a gift. It's about purifying your heart. This is not tafsir. This is not tafsir. This is seeking Allah's guidance through His words and letting His words speak to you. That is possible. Very possible. Let's read another ayah, please. Hearing Allah's message to you. Now, I want you to hear this as a parent. Usually this ayah is addressing kids to be nice to their parents. But imagine yourself as parent, if you're not, and see if this ayah is speaking to you. Now,
your Lord has commanded that you should worship none but Him, and that you be kind to your parents. If either or both of them reach old age with you, say no word that shows impatience with them, and do not be harsh with them, but speak to them respectfully. And lower your wing in humility towards them in kindness, and say, Lord, have mercy on them, just as they cared for me when I was little.
It's very easy, very direct message to children to treat their parents in the best way. Because Allah created you, and the parents were the means through which that creation came into being. So you worship Allah and you respect them. Allah provided for you, and that providence came through your parents. You worship Allah and you respect them. There is that miraculous connection. So this is the reason why worship and respect. But the question here, it's easy to understand that. But if I am a parent, how can I read this ayah? What message could I hear from this ayah? How would you respond to the ayah as a parent? Do you think it's not addressing you? No, it can still be addressing you. How? No.
Think about how you treated your parents. Or how
But
you
khalas,
should.
this is too late.
Oh,
Unless
already
you do
done.
good for them in terms of sadaqat and du'as. But one of the great scholars of Islam, Ibn Aqil, said when he heard this ayah, he made a very sincere dua. He said, "Oh Allah, as you're asking my kids to be kind to me in this life, be kind to me on the afterlife." Have you ever thought about this? Allah is asking your kids to treat you nicely. So he thought of his position before Allah. Allah cares for you to the point that he's asking your kids to respect you. So the ayah still relates to you. So, oh Allah, as you're asking my kids to treat me kindly, so treat me with your mercy on the day of judgment. Again, formulating a dua out of the ayah. Do not think that these ayat, if you read Surah Al-Baqarah, it's talking about Banu Israel, it does not relate to me. Surah Al-Imran about Jews and Christians. Surah Al-Nisa about laws. It's not, everything relates to you. Literally, everything relates to you. And as I said, we have layers of meaning, and we're trying to peel away one after the other. طيب, can you move to the next example, please?
We created the heavens, the earth, and everything between, in 6 days without tiring. So, Prophet, bear everything they say with patience. Celebrate the praise of your Lord before the rising and setting of the sun. Proclaim his praise in the night and at the end of every prayer.
See that, noticing the flow of the ayat. When I was reading these ayat, I was expecting something different. The first ayah says, can you read the first ayah again?
We created the heavens, the earth, and everything between in 6 days without tiring.
Okay, so it should not be about be patient. It will be, I will destroy them. Right? I have the ultimate power and the absolute power. And instead of saying, I will destroy them in a second, it says, be patient, celebrate the praise of your Lord. So again, you understand the nature of life from this ayat. And the attitude of the believers. Just because you're going through hardship and it is not removed yet, does not mean you doubt Allah's power. No, there is no contradiction between the two. I understand who I am, who Allah is, what is life and what is the afterlife. I am a servant, and I have the attitude of the servant. And the ayat is saying, I did all of these marvelous things. Destroying them will not take a second. Time does not even apply to Allah. So second is just, we're talking metaphorical here. Time does not apply to Allah. So they can be just tried. Language fails to talk about Allah in many areas. Because when you say, when Allah created, there was no when this happened. But anyway, I do not want to confuse you. But do you get the point here? The point is, do not distrust Allah because your problem is not solved. You take this brokenness as a shortcut way to demonstrate more servanthood before Allah. There is no contradiction. Do not say, if he's merciful and powerful, there should be no evil. Because if there is evil, and he didn't want to remove it, then he's not merciful. If he cannot remove it, he's not able. This is what they use as an argument for denying God. And this is absolutely wrong. Because we do not only say Allah is powerful and all-merciful, we also say Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. When you add all of these attributes together, it leads to trust It does not lead to denying Allah. You see the difference? Do not limit Allah's attributes to two and say, so how come there is evil? This is also another topic, but you do not see a contradiction here. The question is not here. Absolute power does not mean there should be no evil. Because we know what this life is for, we know who we are, who Allah is, and the afterlife. When you have this big equation, then yes, we can understand why evil could be possible in that broken world. The next exercise is, again, noticing the Allah's message. What would be Allah's message to you? These are different ayat, a lot of different ayat, but I want you to think about what is common in each ayah, or in each section, or cluster of ayat. Can you move on, Ya Sidi?
Indeed, God is with those who are mindful of Him and who do good.
Okay, now. And then we have next set of ayat about the righteous people. This is different ayat, different surah.
They fulfill their vows, they fear a day of widespread woes. They give food to the poor, the orphan, and the captive, though they love it themselves. The righteous will be in gardens with flowing springs. They will receive their Lord's gifts because of the good they did before, sleeping only little at night, praying at dawn for God's forgiveness, giving a rightful share of their wealth to the beggar and the deprived.
So again, remember, I want you to see what is the thread that connects all of that is going through all of these ayat. The next ayah.
Those who recite God's scripture, keep up the prayer, give secretly and openly from what we have provided for them, may hope for a trade that will never decline.
And the next.
Say, Prophet, I am only a mortal like you, but it has been revealed to me that your God is one. Take the straight path to Him and seek His forgiveness. Woe to the idolaters who do not pay the prescribed alms and refuse to believe in the world to come.
And the next.
You who believe, be steadfast in your devotion to God and bear witness impartially. Do not let hatred of others lead you away from justice, and adhere to justice, for that is closer to awareness of God. Be mindful of God. God is well aware of all that you do.
And the next.
Those angels who carry the throne and those who surround it celebrate the praise of their Lord and have faith in Him. They beg forgiveness for the believers. O Lord, you embrace all things in mercy and knowledge. So forgive those who turn to you and follow your path. Save them from the pains of hell.
Good. So what is common in all of these sets of ayat?
In general, it says Allah is going to be with those who have taqwa, and there's a way to earn that taqwa with all these good deeds in ibadah. So many different ways.
Good. You're very close. So I would say ultimate worship lies in two things: honoring Allah and serving people. Honoring Allah and serving people. Each example would say that. You will always see these 2 points together. Allah is with those who have taqwa and muhsinun. Taqwa is your relationship with Allah. Muhsinun. Also, aqamu as-salah wa atawu az-zakah. They pray, they give charity. Every ayah here that we dealt with in that section has something to deal with honoring Allah and serving people. That is a message to you. If you want to grow in your relationship with Allah, these are big things that is. There are some other ayat that also strengthen this idea. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. Pray to your Lord and sacrifice the camels. Pray to your Lord, that is your relationship with Allah. Sacrifice the camel, this is the greatest, the most precious thing the Arab had. So when you give food to the poor and the needy, that is an act of ihsan to them. So you see this theme of honoring Allah and even the angels, they have faith in Allah and they are making dua for you. That is honoring Allah and serving people in a way or another. So, inshallah, next time we'll talk about another layer of tadabbur. And thank you very much for coming. And please practice these ayat that I am handing out to you. And start reading the Quran 10 minutes a day. Inshallah, it would be a great discipline for you. Jazakumullah khair.